The billionaire left her on their wedding day. 6 years later, he saw her with a little girl. Some mornings are meant to be perfect. This wasn't one of them. Mara Sullivan stood before the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the Riverside Manor, her reflection revealing everything she had dreamed of becoming. The ivory silk dress hugged her curves perfectly, the delicate lace sleeves catching the morning light streaming through tall windows. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant updo, honey-colored eyes bright with anticipation. After 2 years of planning, 2 years of loving Caleb Whitmore with every fiber of her being, this was supposed to be the beginning of their forever. Her phone buzzed on the mahogany vanity. "Don't check it," whispered Bella, her maid of honor, applying final touches to the bouquet of white peonies. "It's probably just another congratulations message." But something in Mara's chest tightened. Call it intuition, call it fear. She knew. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the device. The message was from Caleb. "Mara, an opportunity has come up with Corp. I can only negotiate in person. I need to board now. I won't be able to make it to the event on time. I hope you understand." Caleb. Event. He called their wedding an event. The phone slipped from her hands, clattering against the hardwood floor. The screen cracked, spiderwebbing across his name like her heart was doing in that exact moment. "What is it?" Bella rushed over, reading the message over Mara's shoulder. Her face went pale. No, this has to be a mistake. He wouldn't." "He would." Mara's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of sudden understanding. He absolutely would. Outside, guests were arriving. She could hear car doors slamming, laughter drifting up from the gardens below. 300 people had come to witness their love story. Caleb's business associates, her family who had flown in from across the country, friends who had helped plan every detail of this day, and the groom was boarding a plane to close a deal. Mara's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, where the tiniest secret was growing, the surprise she had planned to share tonight during their first dance as husband and wife. The baby clothes hidden in her suitcase upstairs, a onesie with "Our First Project Together" printed in soft blue letters. She had giggled when she bought it, imagining Caleb's expression when he unwrapped it in their honeymoon suite. Now the joke felt cruel. "What do we do?" Bella's voice cracked. "The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Mara straightened, something cold and final settling in her chest. She began pulling pins from her hair, watching her reflection transform from bride to woman betrayed. "We cancel everything. Mara, maybe if you call him." "No." The word came out sharp, definitive. He made his choice. On the most important day of our lives, he chose a business opportunity over me, over us. Her voice broke slightly on the last word, but she pushed forward. "I won't beg someone to love me enough to show up." Through the window, she watched a black sedan pull up to the main entrance. Caleb's best man, probably arriving to discover what she had just learned. Soon, everyone would know. The whispers would start, the pitying looks, the questions she couldn't bear to answer. By evening, the manor was empty except for the cleanup crew dismantling what should have been their celebration. Mara had already booked a red-eye to New York, accepting the job at Morrison & Associates that she had turned down months ago to stay close to Caleb. She changed her phone number before boarding the plane, and in her carry-on bag, beneath the wedding dress she'd never wear again, was a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. The future Caleb would never know existed. What would you have done if the person you loved most chose ambition over your wedding day? And what if you were carrying their child? "Mommy, you're crying again." Mara Sullivan looked down at her 5-year-old daughter, Elin, who was tugging at her navy blazer with small, concerned hands. They stood in the gleaming lobby of Morrison & Associates, surrounded by the architectural models that had made Mara one of New York's most sought-after sustainable design specialists. "I'm not crying, sweetheart," Mara said, quickly wiping away what she told herself was just exhaustion. "Mommy's just tired." But Elin knew better. At 5, she had already developed an uncanny ability to read her mother's emotions, a skill born from being the only constant in each other's lives. "Is it because of the man in the picture again?" Mara's breath caught. Last night, while packing for their trip to Chicago, Elin had discovered the old photo tucked between Mara's design portfolios. A picture from happier times, Mara and Caleb at a company retreat, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something now forgotten. "No, baby girl." Mara knelt down, adjusting Elin's small backpack. "Mommy's just nervous about her big presentation today." It was partially true. Today's conference on sustainable urban development could launch her firm into international recognition. But the real reason for her tears was sitting in her laptop bag, A folder labeled Daddy's Memories that she'd been updating for 6 years. Videos of Aylin's first steps, photos of every birthday, report cards from preschool, even recordings of Aylin singing herself to sleep, her voice sweet and pure. Mara had documented everything, telling herself it was for Aylin's future, but deep down, knowing it was for him, the man who had chosen a boardroom over their wedding day. Flight 447 to Chicago now boarding, announced the gate agent. As they walked toward their seats, Mara noticed Aylin's curious gaze taking in everything around them. This was her daughter's first airplane ride, and despite Mara's financial success, luxuries like family vacations had been sacrificed for stability in Aylin's college fund. "Look, Mommy." Aylin pressed her face against the small airplane window as they settled into their economy seats. The clouds looked like cotton candy. Mara smiled, her first genuine smile in days. This was why she did it all. Worked 18-hour days, turned down social invitations, built walls around her heart. Everything was for this little girl who saw magic in ordinary things. "Excuse me, is anyone sitting here?" The voice came from the aisle, deep and familiar in a way that made Mara's blood freeze. She looked up slowly, knowing even before her eyes confirmed it. Caleb Whitmore stood there, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, holding a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His dark hair was peppered with silver now, his jawline sharper, but those steel blue eyes were exactly as she remembered. He was staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. Mara. The single word hung between them like a bridge neither was prepared to cross. Around them, other passengers continued boarding, unaware that time had just folded in on itself. Aylin looked up from her coloring book, studying the tall stranger with the same honey-colored eyes that she shared with her mother. "Mommy, who is that man?" Caleb's gaze shifted to Aylin, and Mara watched something flicker across his face. Confusion, calculation, then a dawning realization that made his complexion pale. "This is—" Mara's voice caught. She cleared her throat, her mind racing through 1,000 possible explanations, none of them adequate. "This is an old friend, sweetheart." "Hello," Aylin said politely, the way Mara had taught her to greet adults. "I'm Aylin Sullivan. I'm 5 years old, and I'm going to Chicago with my mommy for her work." Caleb stared at the child, at his child, though he didn't know it yet, taking in every detail. The auburn hair that caught the light exactly like Mara's, the intelligent eyes, the small hands that gestured expressively as she spoke. 5 years old, he repeated softly, and Mara saw the moment when the math clicked into place in his analytical mind. The flight attendant approached. "Sir, we need to finish boarding. Is this your seat?" Caleb looked at his boarding pass, then at the empty seat directly across the aisle from Mara and Aylin. Of all the flights, all the seats, all the moments in time, this was happening. "Yes," he said, never taking his eyes off the little girl who had no idea she was looking at her father. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." As the plane prepared for takeoff, Mara gripped Aylin's hand, feeling the weight of 6 years of secrets pressing down on her chest like the altitude change. And across the narrow aisle, Caleb Whitmore, the man who had missed their wedding for a business deal, was about to discover the cost of that choice was immeasurably higher than he had ever imagined. The seatbelt sign flickered on as the plane hit an unexpected patch of rough air, but the real turbulence was happening in row 14. Caleb couldn't stop staring. Every few seconds, his gaze drifted across the narrow aisle to where Aylin was meticulously coloring a butterfly, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, the same expression he remembered seeing on Mara's face when she worked on her architectural drawings. "She's beautiful," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Mara's grip tightened on her armrest. "Thank you. She looks like you." A pause. "When she was born, when did she—" "March 15th, Mara answered before he could finish the question. 2:23 in the morning. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. The date hit Caleb like a physical blow. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving quickly across the calculator app. March 15th. If Aylin was 5 now, that meant— His hand stilled. The wedding had been scheduled for June 12th, 9 months before March 15th. "Mara," his voice was strained, careful. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Across the aisle, Aylin held up her coloring book. "Mommy, look. I made the butterfly purple and gold like the one we saw in Central Park." "It's gorgeous, baby," Mara replied, her voice artificially bright. Then, turning back to Caleb, she met his gaze directly. "Ask your question. Is she mine?" The words hung in the recycled airplane air between them. Mara felt every defense she'd built over 6 years threatening to crumble. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times, but somehow she had never imagined it happening at 30,000 feet with her daughter sitting 3 feet away. Yes. One word. Simple. Final. It changed everything. Caleb's face went through a series of emotions. Shock, disbelief, something that might have been grief, and finally, a controlled anger that made his jaw clench. 6 years, he whispered. 6 years, Mara. How could you not tell me? Tell you? Mara's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing at Elin, who was now absorbed in a new coloring page. She lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. Tell you what exactly? That I was pregnant when you abandoned me at the altar? That I found out I was carrying your child the same day you decided a business meeting was more important than our wedding? I would have come back. If I had known. No. The word came out sharp and definitive. You wouldn't have. You made your choice, Caleb. You chose Estheracorp over me, over us, over everything we had planned together. What makes you think finding out about a baby would have changed that? Caleb ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Mara remembered from their arguments years ago. Because it's different. A child is a responsibility you never wanted. Mara finished. You told me yourself, remember? Kids complicate everything, Mara. They make you vulnerable in business. They're a liability. Those were your exact words. The memory hit him like ice water. He had said that during one of their late-night conversations about the future, back when children seemed like a distant possibility, not a 5-year-old girl with his eyes and her mother's determination. Mommy? Elin's voice interrupted their tense exchange. The nice man looked sad. Is he okay? Both adults turned to look at her. Elin was studying Caleb with the sort of innocent concern that only children possess. Her small face wrinkled with worry. He's fine, sweetheart, Mara managed. But Elin wasn't satisfied. She unbuckled her seatbelt and, before Mara could stop her, climbed across the aisle to Caleb's seat. Are you really okay, mister? You look like I do when I have a tummy ache. Caleb found himself at eye level with his daughter for the first time. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. She had his stubborn chin, his thick eyelashes, even the small freckle near her left temple that matched one on his own face. He started, then stopped. How do you tell a 5-year-old that you're devastated by your own failures? I'm just a little tired, that's all. My mommy gets tired a lot too, Elin said seriously. She works really hard, but she always feels better when I give her hugs. Do you want a hug? Before Caleb could respond, small arms wrapped around his neck and he felt something inside his chest break apart. This child, his child, was offering comfort to a stranger because she had a kind heart. Despite growing up without a father, despite the struggles Mara must have faced raising her alone, Elin was generous and loving. Over Elin's shoulder, he saw Mara watching them, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Elin, come back to your seat, Mara said softly. The seatbelt sign is still on. As Elin climbed back across the aisle, she looked at Caleb one more time. I hope you feel better, mister. Maybe when we land, you can come have ice cream with me and my mommy. Ice cream makes everything better. The plane began its descent into Chicago, and Caleb realized that somewhere over the Midwest, his entire world had shifted on its axis. He was a father. He had been a father for 5 years and never knew it. And the little girl who had just offered him ice cream was the most important person he would never get the chance to know. The Chicago airport was a maze of travelers rushing toward their destinations, but Caleb felt frozen in place as he watched Mara gather Elin's scattered coloring books and stuffed elephant. Wait, he called out as they prepared to leave the gate area. Please, we need to talk. Mara paused, her hand protectively on Elin's shoulder. I have a presentation in 3 hours, Caleb, and frankly I don't think there's anything left to say. Everything's left to say. His voice carried a desperation that surprised even him. Mara, I just found out I have a daughter. You can't expect me to just walk away, like you did 6 years ago. The words hit their target. Caleb flinched, but pressed on. That's not fair. Fair? Mara's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you showing up to our wedding. Fair would have been you being there when I threw up every morning for 4 months. Fair would have been you holding my hand during 18 hours of labor, or getting up for the 3 a.m. feedings, or... Mommy, Elin interrupted, tugging on Mara's blazer. You're using your work voice. Are you mad at the nice man? Mara immediately softened, kneeling down to Elin's level. No, sweetheart. Mommy's just, discussing grown-up things. Why don't you sit right here for a minute? She guided Elin to a nearby chair within sight but out of earshot. When she turned back to Caleb, her armor was firmly in place. One conversation, that's all you get. There's a coffee shop near baggage claim. 30 minutes. The coffee shop was nearly empty, save for a few business travelers grabbing quick caffeine fixes. Elin sat at a small table nearby, working on a new coloring page, completely absorbed in her task of making a unicorn rainbow-colored. She's perfect, Caleb said quietly, watching his daughter. How did you... raising a child alone in New York? I managed. Mara's tone was clipped. Daycare, babysitters, my neighbor Mrs. Chen when I had to work late. We figured it out. Mrs. Chen? Caleb caught the name, realizing how little he knew about the life they'd built without him. She's 78 and makes the best dumplings in Manhattan. Elin calls her Grandma Chen because... Mara's voice trailed off. Because she doesn't have real grandparents in her life, Caleb finished. The weight of that realization settled over him. His parents would have adored Elin. Mara's family would have helped. But his absence had cost Elin more than just a father. I tried to give her everything, Mara continued. Music lessons, books, trips to the zoo. I wanted her to have a childhood full of wonder even without me. You made that choice, Caleb, not me. He studied Mara's face, noting the fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 6 years ago, the way she held herself with a strength that seemed both natural and hard-earned. Why didn't you try to find me, even just to tell me? Mara set down her untouched coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Do you want the honest answer? Please. Because I was terrified you'd try to take her from me. The words came out in a rush. You have unlimited resources, Caleb. Lawyers, money, connections. I'm just an architect from Queens who worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. If you had wanted custody, I would never... Wouldn't you? Mara's eyes blazed. The Caleb I knew valued control above everything else. Winning was what mattered. If you'd seen Elin as an asset to be acquired or worse, as a problem to be solved, the accusation hung between them and Caleb couldn't deny its truth. 6 years ago, he might have seen a child as exactly that, a complication to be managed with his usual ruthless efficiency. I've changed, he said quietly. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look exactly the same. Same expensive suit, same calculating look, same assumption that you can fix everything with the right strategy. Mommy, Elin's voice cut through their tension. She was holding up her coloring page, beaming. I finished the unicorn. Can we get that ice cream now? I promised the nice man it would make him feel better. Mara glanced at her watch. We need to get to the hotel, baby. Mommy has her big presentation, remember? But we promised, Elin said, her lower lip jutting out in a pout that was pure Caleb, something Mara noticed with a pang. Caleb stood up abruptly. I'll drive you. To the hotel, I mean. Then maybe ice cream after your presentation? We don't need a ride, Mara said quickly. I have a car waiting. It's no trouble. Please, Mommy. Elin's eyes were wide with hope. I really want ice cream, and he looks like he needs friends. Mara looked between her daughter and the man who had shattered her world, then rebuilt it in his absence. The man who was now looking at Elin with an expression she'd never seen before, wonder mixed with profound regret. Fine, she said finally. Just the ride to the hotel. As they walked toward the exit, Elin slipped her small hand into Caleb's without hesitation. He looked down at their joined hands, his large and weathered from years of boardroom handshakes, hers tiny and trusting, and felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. For the first time in his life, Caleb Whitmore understood what it meant to hold someone's whole world in your hands. And for the first time since that devastating wedding day, Mara wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than endings. The black sedan pulled up to the Palmer House Hilton, and Elin pressed her face against the window with wonder. Mommy, look, it's like a castle. Caleb watched his daughter's excitement with fascination. In his world of luxury hotels and private jets, he'd forgotten how magical ordinary things could seem through a child's eyes. The ornate lobby that he barely noticed made Elin gasp with delight. The ceiling has gold flowers, she whispered loudly, her voice echoing in the grand space. Those are called frescoes, Mara explained gently, her architect's eye automatically noting the intricate details. Artists painted them by hand a very long time ago. Can I be an artist like that when I grow up? You can be anything you want to be, sweetheart. Caleb noticed how naturally Mara encouraged their daughter's dreams, how she never said we'll see or maybe, but always, Yes, if you work hard. It was a stark contrast to his own childhood, where possibilities were measured by profit margins and practical outcomes. At the check-in desk, a problem arose. "I'm sorry, Ms. Sullivan," the desk clerk said apologetically. "There seems to be an issue with your reservation. The conference organizers had a mix-up with the room blocks. We're completely booked for the next 2 nights." Mara's face paled. "That's impossible. I confirmed this reservation 3 times. Let me check other hotels in the area," the clerk offered, typing rapidly. "Although with the medical convention and the architecture conference both in town, everything's booked," Caleb said quietly. He'd already pulled out his phone and made 3 calls while Mara was speaking with the clerk. "I checked. The entire downtown area is full." Elin tugged on Mara's blazer. "What's wrong, Mommy? Are we going to sleep in the car like in that movie?" "No, baby, we'll figure something out." But Mara's voice carried a strain that her daughter didn't miss. "I have a suite at the Four Seasons," Caleb said carefully. 2 bedrooms. You and Elin could take one and I'll take the other. Just for tonight, until we can sort this out. "Absolutely not. Mara, be practical. Your presentation is in 2 hours. You need somewhere to prepare, and Elin needs a place to rest." "I said no. Mommy." Elin's voice was small, uncertain. "I'm tired, and hungry. My tummy feels funny." The stress was affecting Elin, something Mara couldn't bear. She looked at her daughter's worried face, then at Caleb's surprisingly patient expression. "One night," she said finally. "Separate rooms, and we leave first thing in the morning." Of course. The Four Seasons suite was elegant but not ostentatious. Exactly what Mara would have expected from Caleb's refined taste. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Grant Park, and Elin immediately ran to press her nose against the glass. "I can see tiny people down there. They look like ants." While Mara unpacked their overnight bag, Caleb found himself in the unfamiliar position of trying to entertain a 5-year-old. He sat awkwardly on the sofa as Elin explored the suite, her chatter filling the space with life. "Do you live in a place like this?" she asked, climbing onto the chair beside him. "Something like it, yes." "All by yourself?" The question hit deeper than intended. "Yes, all by myself. That must be lonely," Elin said with the matter-of-fact wisdom of childhood. "I sleep in Mommy's bed sometimes when I have bad dreams." "Who takes care of you when you have bad dreams?" Caleb stared at this little person who seemed to see straight through him. I don't really have bad dreams." "Everyone has bad dreams sometimes," Elin said seriously. "Mommy has them too. She cries in her sleep and says a name. It sounds like Kaler or maybe Cable." Caleb's breath caught. "Caleb? Yeah, that's it. Do you know who that is?" Before he could answer, Mara emerged from the bedroom, having changed into her presentation outfit, a sharp burgundy suit that complemented her auburn hair. "You look beautiful," Caleb said without thinking. "Thank you," Mara replied stiffly, then turned to Elin. "Baby, I need to go to my meeting now. You'll stay here with—" "I want to come with you," Elin protested. "It's just boring grown-up talk about buildings. You'll be much happier here, but I don't want to stay with a stranger." The word stranger hit Caleb like a physical blow. That's what he was to his own daughter. A stranger. "What if," he said carefully, "what if we ordered room service? Something special? And maybe we could watch a movie?" Elin's eyes lit up. "Can we get chicken nuggets? And apple juice? And ice cream for dessert?" "Elin, that's not a proper dinner," Mara started. "It's fine," Caleb said. "Just this once." Mara hesitated, clearly torn between her protective instincts and the practicality of the situation. "I'll be back by 7, 8 at the latest." "We'll be fine," Caleb assured her, though he had no idea if that was true. After Mara left, an awkward silence settled over the suite. Elin sat on the sofa, swinging her legs, studying Caleb with curious eyes. "Are you really my mommy's friend?" she asked. We used to be very good friends. A long time ago. Why aren't you friends anymore? How do you explain failed relationships to a 5-year-old? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt each other. Did you hurt my mommy?" The directness of the question stunned him. "Yes, I hurt her very badly." "Did you say sorry?" "Not yet. Not properly." Elin nodded solemnly. "You should. When I hurt someone, Mommy makes me say sorry and give them a hug. Hugs make everything better. Your mommy is very wise. She's the best mommy in the whole world," Elin said with absolute certainty. "She works really hard so we can have nice things. And she reads me stories every night, even when she's tired. And she makes funny voices for all the characters." Each detail was another reminder of everything Caleb had missed, everything Mara had done alone. As they waited for room service, Elin continued chattering about her life, her best friend Zoe at school, her favorite books, the way she and her mommy danced in their tiny kitchen on Sunday mornings. And with every story, Caleb fell a little more in love with the daughter he'd never known he had. Mara returned to the suite at 7:30, exhausted but triumphant. Her presentation had gone better than expected. 3 potential international partnerships and a standing ovation from the sustainable design community. But all thoughts of professional success vanished when she opened the suite door. Caleb was asleep on the sofa, still in his expensive suit but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. Elin was curled against his side, her small hand resting on his chest, both of them breathing in the peaceful rhythm of sleep. The coffee table was covered with the remnants of their evening. Empty plates, Elin's coloring books, and what appeared to be a makeshift fort built from couch cushions. The sight hit Mara like a physical blow. For just a moment, she could see what might have been, what should have been, the family they could have created together. She must have made a sound, because Caleb's eyes opened immediately, alert in the way of someone accustomed to constant vigilance. When he saw her, he carefully shifted Elin so she wouldn't wake. "How did it go?" he whispered. "Good. Very good." She set down her portfolio, moving closer. "What happened here? We had dinner, watched a movie, something about a princess and a frog. Then she wanted to build a castle." He gestured at the cushion fort. "Apparently, I'm not very good at architectural engineering." Despite herself, Mara smiled. "She's very particular about her building projects. Wonder where she gets that from." "She talked about you," Caleb said softly. "A lot. The stories you read her, the songs you sing in the kitchen, the way you let her help cook breakfast on Sundays even though it takes twice as long." Mara's throat tightened. "She shouldn't have bothered you with all that." "She didn't bother me. I wanted to know." He paused, looking down at Elin's sleeping face. "She asked me why we weren't friends anymore." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I hurt you very badly, and I haven't said sorry properly yet." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. "Caleb, let me carry her to bed," he said quietly. As he lifted Elin, she stirred slightly, automatically wrapping her arms around his neck in the trusting way children do. Caleb froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of holding his daughter for the first time. In the bedroom, Mara pulled back the covers while Caleb gently laid Elin down. Together they removed her shoes and tucked her in. Elin mumbled something in her sleep about castles and ice cream, making them both smile. "She's remarkable," Caleb whispered, as they stepped back into the living area. "She is." Mara kicked off her heels, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day. "Thank you for watching her. I know it probably wasn't what you expected when you boarded that plane this morning. Nothing about today was what I expected." He loosened his tie completely, and Mara noticed how the formal businessman facade had softened during his evening with Elin. "Mara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Haven't I been honest enough for one day? When you were pregnant, were you afraid?" The question caught her off guard. She sank into the armchair across from him, considering her answer. "Terrified," she admitted. "I was 28, alone in a new city, starting a new job. I didn't know anything about being a mother. I read every pregnancy book I could find, took classes at the hospital, practiced diaper changes on stuffed animals." She laughed softly at the memory. "Mrs. Chen found me crying over a parenting manual at 2 in the morning when I was 7 months along. What did she do? She made me tea and told me that love was the only qualification that really mattered, that everything else could be learned." Mara's voice grew quiet. She was right. "I should have been there." "Yes, you should have." There was no anger in her voice now, just tired honesty. "But you weren't. And I learned that I was stronger than I thought." Caleb studied her face in the soft lamplight. She looked older, yes, but there was a strength in her features that hadn't been there 6 years ago. Motherhood had refined her, made her more beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with physical appearance. "I've thought about you," he said quietly. "About that day, about what I threw away." "Have you? Or did you just file it away as a business lesson learned?" The accusation stung because it held truth. "Both, I suppose. For a long time I told myself it was for the best, that we weren't compatible long term, that you'd be happier with someone who could give you the emotional availability you needed. How convenient for you." "It was," he admitted. "It was easier to believe I'd done you a favor than to face the fact that I was a coward." The honesty in his voice surprised her. "What changed?" "Seeing her. Seeing you. He ran a hand through his hair, realizing that every major decision I've made for the past 6 years has been influenced by the memory of what I lost. The Asthera deal? It fell through 3 months later. The company I thought was so important went bankrupt within 2 years. I know, Mara said quietly. You know, I kept track of you. In the beginning, anyway. I needed to know if you were happy with your choice. Were you hoping I'd be miserable? Maybe a little. A small smile played at her lips. Is that terrible? No, it's human. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. For what it's worth, I haven't been happy. I've been successful, wealthy, respected, but not happy. And you think seeing Elin again will change that? I think, he said carefully, that knowing I have a daughter changes everything, whether you let me be part of her life or not. The weight of his words settled between them. Outside, Chicago sparkled in the darkness, but inside the suite, the only light came from table lamps and the soft glow of possibility. She asked me once if she had a daddy, Mara said suddenly. She was 4, and we were at the park. She saw all the other families with fathers, and she wanted to know where hers was. What did you tell her? That her daddy lived far away and couldn't visit, but that he loved her very much. Mara's voice broke slightly. I lied to her, Caleb, because I didn't know if you were capable of loving anyone. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for the first time in years, Caleb wasn't sure he had an answer. The next morning arrived with unexpected complications. Elin woke up with a fever and a scratchy throat, turning their planned early departure into an impossible task. It's just a cold, Mara said, more to herself than to Caleb as she felt Elin's forehead for the 3rd time. She gets them sometimes when she's tired or stressed. Like yesterday was? Caleb asked quietly, and Mara shot him a sharp look. This isn't anyone's fault, but her defensive tone suggested otherwise. Elin lay curled on the sofa, wrapped in the hotel's plush robe, looking smaller and more fragile than her usual energetic self. I want to go home, Mommy, she whimpered. I don't feel good. I know, baby. But we can't get on an airplane when you're sick. The doctor needs to check you first. The hotel physician arrived within an hour, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez who examined Elin with gentle efficiency. It's definitely just a cold, but her fever's a bit high for travel, she confirmed. I'd recommend staying put for at least another day, maybe 2. Keep her hydrated, lots of rest. After the doctor left, an awkward silence settled over the suite. Mara sat beside Elin, stroking her hair, while Caleb stood by the window, unsure of his place in this domestic crisis. I can get you your own room, he offered. Now that she's sick, you probably want privacy too. It's fine, Mara interrupted. We'll manage. Mommy? Elin's voice was weak but determined. Can you show him the pictures? What pictures, sweetheart? The ones in your computer bag. The ones of me when I was little. Mara's face went pale. In her laptop bag was the folder she'd been updating for 6 years. Daddy's memories. She'd brought it on this trip, telling herself it was just backup files, but deep down knowing she carried it everywhere like a talisman. Elin, those are just... Please, Mommy. I want him to see when I lost my first tooth, and when I learned to ride my bike, and the video of me singing at the school show. Caleb looked between them, sensing the weight of whatever Mara was hiding. You don't have to... Yes, I do, Mara said suddenly, surprising herself. She retrieved her laptop bag with trembling hands. I've been carrying this around for 6 years. Maybe it's time. She pulled out a metal box, about the size of a shoebox, and set it on the coffee table between them. Caleb stared at it as if it might explode. What is it? Everything, Mara said simply. Everything you missed. With careful hands, she opened the box. The first item was a hospital bracelet, tiny, pink, with baby girl Sullivan printed in faded letters. From the day she was born, Mara explained, her voice barely above a whisper. I kept thinking, someday you might want to know what time she arrived, how much she weighed. Beneath the bracelet were hundreds of photographs, printed and organized chronologically. Caleb picked up the first one with shaking hands. A newborn Elin, red-faced and perfect, wrapped in a hospital blanket. She was born at 2:23 a.m., Mara continued. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had your stubborn chin from day one. The next photo showed Elin at maybe 2 weeks old, sleeping in what appeared to be a cramped apartment. Then 1 month, 2 months. Caleb could see himself in her features emerging more clearly with each picture. Her first smile, Mara narrated, pointing to a photo of a 3-month-old Elin grinning toothlessly. She was watching me hang laundry, and she just lit up. I took about 50 pictures trying to capture it again. There were videos too, stored on a tablet that Mara handled like precious cargo. Eileen's first attempts at crawling, her first steps taken in what looked like a tiny kitchen, her first words. "Say mama," came Mara's voice from the tablet's speakers, and baby Eileen babbled happily before clearly saying, "Dada." Mara paused the video abruptly. That was her first word. She said it for months, even though she couldn't finish the sentence. Caleb's hands were shaking as he scrolled through year after year of his daughter's life. Birthday parties in small apartments with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings with modest presents but obvious joy. Eileen's first day of school, looking nervous but brave in a second-hand uniform. "I documented everything," Mara said. "Every milestone, every funny thing she said, every time she did something that reminded me of you. I told myself it was for her, for when she got older. But really, I think I was keeping it for you." "Why?" His voice was hoarse with emotion. "Because despite everything, I couldn't believe you wouldn't want to know. Couldn't believe you'd choose to miss all of this forever." Near the bottom of the box was a small wrapped package, the paper faded and corners worn from handling. "What's that?" Caleb asked. "Your wedding present," Mara said quietly. "The one I never got to give you." With trembling fingers, he unwrapped it. Inside was a tiny onesie with "Our first project together," printed in soft blue letters, exactly as Mara had imagined that devastating morning 6 years ago. "I was going to surprise you on our honeymoon," she whispered. "I had this whole plan. Dinner on the beach, then I'd give you this little box. I thought you'd cry. I thought you'd be happy." Caleb held the tiny garment, imagining the conversation that never happened, the joy that was never shared. Around them, the box of memories seemed to glow with the weight of lost time. "She's watching us," Eileen said sleepily from the sofa. Despite her fever, she'd been quietly observing their emotional excavation of her life. "What, baby?" Mara wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "The nice man is crying, like you do sometimes when you look at those pictures." Caleb touched his face, surprised to find it wet with tears he hadn't realized he was shedding. "I'm sorry," he said to both of them. "I'm so sorry for all of it." "I know," Mara said simply, "but sorry doesn't give us back 6 years." "No," he agreed, "but maybe it gives us a place to start." From the sofa, Ellen's small voice added the wisdom that only children possess. "Mommy always says it's never too late to do the right thing." And for the first time since that plane landed in Chicago, all three of them wondered if that might actually be true. By afternoon, Ellen's fever had broken, but she was still too weak to travel. She dozed fitfully on the sofa while Mara worked quietly on her laptop, responding to emails from potential clients excited about her presentation. Caleb had stepped out to handle some business calls, giving mother and daughter space to rest. When he returned, he carried several shopping bags and wore an expression of nervous uncertainty. "I hope this is okay," he said, setting down the bags carefully. "I thought, since we're stuck here another day, maybe Eileen would like some things to help her feel better." "Caleb, you didn't need to." "I wanted to." From the first bag, he pulled out a soft teddy bear wearing a tiny doctor's coat, complete with a stethoscope. From the second, children's books, classics like Where the Wild Things Are and The Giving Tree. The third bag contained art supplies, colored pencils, a sketch pad, and watercolor paints. "You bought out half the toy store," Mara observed, but her tone wasn't critical. "I didn't know what she'd like. I realized I don't know her favorite color, or if she prefers bears or dolls, or—" He trailed off, looking lost. "I don't know anything about being a father." Eileen stirred on the sofa, her eyes focusing on the new arrivals. "What's all that?" "The nice man brought you some presents," Mara said gently, "to help you feel better." Eileen sat up slowly, still wrapped in the oversized hotel robe. She examined each gift with the serious consideration children give to important matters. "His name is Dr. Snuggles," she announced, hugging the teddy bear, "and he says my throat will be all better tomorrow." "Dr. Snuggles is very wise," Caleb agreed solemnly. "Do you want to color with me?" Eileen asked, patting the sofa beside her. "Mommy always says coloring helps when you're sad." "Am I sad?" Caleb asked, settling carefully next to his daughter. "A little bit. Your eyes look the same way Mommy's do sometimes." Eileen opened the new sketch pad and considered the blank page. "What should we draw?" "I'm not very good at drawing." "That's okay. Art isn't about being good, it's about feeling things." She handed him a blue-colored pencil. "Mommy taught me that." As they worked, Eileen drawing what appeared to be a family of stick figures, Caleb attempting a very geometric tree. Mara watched from her laptop. Something was shifting in the room, some invisible barrier slowly dissolving. "Tell me about school," Caleb said as he added leaves to his tree. "Do you like it?" "Mostly. I like reading and math, but not gym class. The other kids run faster than me." Elin added careful details to her drawing. "My teacher is nice, though. Ms. Rodriguez reads us stories every day after lunch." "What's your favorite story?" "The one about the little prince who lives on an asteroid. He has a rose that he loves very much, but he has to leave her to go on adventures." Elin's tongue poked out in concentration. "It's sad but also beautiful." Caleb glanced at Mara, who had gone very still. The Little Prince had been her favorite book when they were together. She'd read passages aloud to him sometimes, her voice soft in the darkness of their shared apartment. "Mommy reads it to me in both English and French," Elin continued. "She says it's important to know about different places and languages." "Your mommy is very smart. The smartest in the whole world," Elin agreed matter-of-factly. "She builds houses that help the earth, and she knows how to fix the sink when it's broken, and she makes the best pancakes on Sunday mornings." Each detail was another small revelation about the life they'd built without him. Caleb found himself hungry for more, not out of jealousy, but out of a desperate need to understand the woman Mara had become, and the child they'd raised together. "What else do you and Mommy do on Sundays?" "We go to the farmer's market and pick out vegetables for dinner. Then we come home and dance in the kitchen while we cook. Mommy puts on jazz music and spins me around." Elin giggled at the memory. "Sometimes she dips me like they do in old movies." "I'd like to see that sometime," Caleb said quietly. "Maybe you could come to Sunday dinner when we get home," Elin suggested with the casual optimism of childhood. "If Mommy says it's okay." The offer hung in the air like a bridge neither adult was sure how to cross. Mara closed her laptop slowly. "Elin, sweetie, why don't you show him your drawing?" Elin held up her sketch proudly. It showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a house with a large tree. "This is me, and this is Mommy, and this is—" She pointed to the 3rd figure. "Who's that?" Caleb asked gently. "I'm not sure yet," Elin said with 5-year-old honesty, "but I thought maybe it could be you, if you want to be in our picture." The simplicity of the question, "if you want to be in our picture," contained multitudes. It was an invitation and a challenge, and a hope all wrapped in colored pencil lines. "I would be honored to be in your picture," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. "Good," Elin said, adding careful details to his stick figure. "Because families should stick together. That's what Grandma Chen always says." Later that evening, after Elin had fallen asleep clutching Dr. Snuggles, Mara and Caleb found themselves on the suite's balcony, looking out over the Chicago skyline. "She's extraordinary," Caleb said. "How did you raise someone so wise and kind and generous?" "I had good help," Mara replied. "Mrs. Chen, the teachers at her school, even some of the other parents. It takes a village, you know. A village I was never part of." "No," Mara agreed. "But maybe villages can grow." It was the first time she'd suggested any kind of future that included him, and Caleb felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "I know I have no right to ask this," he said carefully, "but would you let me try? To be part of her life, I mean. To learn how to be the father she deserves." "I don't know," Mara said honestly. "I've protected her from disappointment for 5 years. I can't let someone hurt her the way you hurt me." "I understand. But Mara, I can't undo the past 6 years. I can only try to make the next 6 years different." Inside the suite, Elin stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about pictures and families and Sunday pancakes. And on the balcony, 2 people who had once loved each other began to wonder if love, like art, was really about feeling things, even when you weren't sure you were any good at it. The 3rd morning brought sunshine and a fully recovered Elin, who bounced on the hotel bed with renewed energy. "Can we go see the Big Bean today?" she asked, referring to Chicago's famous Cloudgate sculpture. "And the aquarium? And maybe ride on a boat?" "Slow down, sweetheart," Mara laughed, but she was relieved to see her daughter back to her normal, enthusiastic self. "Our flight leaves this afternoon, remember?" "But I don't want to leave yet," Elin protested. "I like it here, and I like spending time with—" She looked at Caleb uncertainly. "What should I call you?" The question hit all 3 of them with unexpected force. For 2 days, Elin had carefully avoided using any name at all, referring to Caleb as the nice man, or simply him. "What would you like to call me?" Caleb asked gently. "I don't know. Mommy says I can't call grown-ups by their first names unless they say it's okay." "It's okay," he assured her. "You can call me Caleb." But Elin frowned, considering this. That doesn't feel right either. It's too formal. How she looked between her mother and Caleb with the serious expression she wore when solving particularly complex problems. Are you my daddy? The directness of the question stole the breath from both adults. Mara's face went pale, while Caleb looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Baby, Mara started carefully, that's a very complicated question. It's not complicated, Elin interrupted with 5-year-old logic. Either he is or he isn't. And if he is, why didn't you tell me? Mara looked to Caleb helplessly. They'd been so focused on navigating their own emotions that they'd forgotten the most important person in this equation, the child who deserved the truth. Yes, Caleb said quietly. I am your daddy. But you live far away, Elin said, processing this information. And you never came to visit me. That's right. And I'm very, very sorry about that. Why didn't you come? How do you explain adult failures to a child? How do you make sense of choices that don't make sense even to yourself? Because I made a very big mistake, Caleb said. The biggest mistake of my whole life. I thought work was more important than family, and I was wrong. Elin considered this with the gravity children bring to important revelations. So you're my daddy, but you're also a stranger. Yes. And you made Mommy sad. Very sad. And you missed my whole life so far. Every day of it, and I'm sorry. Elin was quiet for a long moment, her small face serious as she worked through this information. Finally, she looked up at Mara. Mommy, are you still sad? Sometimes, Mara answered honestly. Are you mad at him? Sometimes that too. But you let him stay here with us. Yes. Why? Mara felt tears prick her eyes. Because even when people hurt us, sometimes we still love them. And sometimes if they're really truly sorry, we can find a way to forgive them. Do you love him? Elin asked with devastating simplicity. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mara looked at Caleb, seeing the man who had broken her heart, but also the man who had spent 2 days patiently coloring with their daughter, who had kept every photo she'd shown him, who had cried over a tiny onesie that represented dreams they'd never shared. I loved him once, she said carefully. Very much, but not anymore. I don't know, Mara admitted. Love is complicated when people hurt each other. Elin nodded as if this made perfect sense. Then she turned to Caleb with the directness that had become familiar. Do you love me? More than I knew it was possible to love anyone, Caleb replied without hesitation. Even though you just met me? I've been waiting my whole life to meet you. I just didn't know it until now. And do you love Mommy? Caleb's eyes met Mara's across the room. Yes, I never stopped loving your mommy. Then why don't you try to fix it? Elin asked with the beautiful simplicity of childhood. When I break something, I try to fix it. Sometimes I need help, but I always try. Some things are harder to fix than others, sweetheart, Mara said gently. But not impossible. The question lingered as they prepared to leave for the airport. Caleb had arranged for his driver to take them, and as they rode through Chicago streets, Elin chattered about everything she'd seen and done, as if trying to hold on to every moment. At the airport, reality began to settle in. In a few hours, Mara and Elin would be back in New York, and this strange, intense interlude would be over. When will I see you again? Elin asked Caleb as they stood in the departure lounge. I don't know, he answered honestly, looking to Mara for guidance. We need to talk, Mara said quietly. All of this, it's a lot to process, for both of us. I understand, but Mara, please don't disappear again. Please. I won't, she promised. We'll figure something out. Daddy? Elin said the word tentatively, trying it out. Will you call me? Mommy has a phone and I know my numbers. Every day if your mommy says it's okay. It's okay, Mara said softly. As their boarding was announced, Elin suddenly threw her arms around Caleb's neck, holding tight. I'm glad I found you, she whispered, even if it took 5 whole years. Me too, baby girl. Me too. As mother and daughter walked toward their gate, Caleb watched until they disappeared from sight. In his pocket was Elin's drawing, the stick figure family standing in front of their house. On the back, in careful 5-year-old writing, she had written, My family. Love, Elin. For the first time in 6 years, Caleb Whitmore understood what he was fighting for. And for the first time in his life, he understood that some things were worth more than any business deal he could ever make. The question now was whether he was brave enough to fight for them, and whether they would let him try. 3 weeks later, Mara's phone rang at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. She was helping Elin with her homework at their small kitchen table when Caleb's name appeared on the screen. the first time he'd called since they'd returned from Chicago. "Mommy, it's Daddy," Elin exclaimed, abandoning her math worksheets. "Can I talk to him first?" Mara's heart still skipped when she heard their daughter use that word so naturally, as if Caleb had always been part of their vocabulary. "Hello, sweetheart." Caleb's voice was warm but strained when Elin grabbed the phone. "Daddy, guess what? I lost another tooth and the tooth fairy gave me $2 whole. And I got a gold star on my spelling test, and Mrs. Rodriguez said my story about the brave princess was the best in the whole class." "That's wonderful, baby girl. You'll have to read it to me sometime. When are you coming to visit? You promised you'd see our apartment." There was a pause that made Mara's stomach tighten. "That's actually why I'm calling, Elin. Can I talk to Mommy for a minute?" "But you just started talking to me," Elin protested. "I know, sweetheart. But this is important grown-up stuff. I promise we'll talk longer next time." Reluctantly, Elin handed the phone back to Mara and returned to her homework, though her ears were clearly tuned to every word. "What's wrong?" Mara asked immediately, stepping into the living room for privacy. "I have to go to Singapore. Emergency acquisition. Our biggest competitor is about to be sold to a European consortium, and if we don't move now, we'll lose our market position entirely." Mara felt a familiar cold dread settle in her chest. "How long?" "6 weeks. Maybe 8. The negotiations are complex, and then there's the regulatory approval process." "6 weeks," Mara repeated flatly. "Mara, I know how this sounds." "Do you?" "Because it sounds exactly like 6 years ago. It sounds like Astheracorp all over again." "It's not the same thing, isn't it?" Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Your business empire needs you, so everything else gets put on hold, including your daughter. That's not fair. This is different." "How? How is it different, Caleb? Because this time you're bothering to call first?" In the kitchen, Elin had stopped pretending to do homework and was listening with the acute awareness children develop when their security is threatened. "Because this time I know what I'm choosing," Caleb said quietly. "And this time I'm choosing you. Both of you. By leaving for 2 months? By turning it down?" Mara felt the world tilt slightly. "What? I'm not going, Mara. I'm sending my VP instead. The board is furious. My investors think I've lost my mind, and there's a very real chance this decision could cost me the company." "Caleb, I missed 6 years of her life because I thought deals and mergers and market positions mattered more than anything else. I'm not missing another day." Mara sank onto her couch, overwhelmed. "But your company will survive, or it won't. But if I get on that plane, if I choose business over family again, I'll lose you both forever. And no amount of money is worth that. You could lose everything you've worked for. I already lost everything that mattered once. I'm not doing it again." Through the phone, Mara could hear the weight of his decision, the magnitude of what he was risking. For her, for Elin, for a family that didn't even officially exist yet. "There's something else," Caleb continued. "I've been looking at apartments in New York. Nothing final, but I want to be closer. I want to be able to take Elin to school sometimes, or come to her spelling tests, or just be around for the ordinary moments." "Caleb, that's a huge change." "I know, and I know I have no right to assume anything about our future, but I'm hoping that maybe we can figure it out together." In the kitchen, Elin appeared in the doorway, her face anxious. "Mommy, is everything okay? You look sad again." Mara looked at her daughter, this brave, beautiful little girl who had spent her whole life with only half a family, who had never once complained about not having a father, who had accepted Caleb with open arms despite having every reason to be wary. "Can you come here for a minute, baby?" Elin padded over in her sock feet, climbing onto the couch beside her mother. Mara put the phone on speaker. "Daddy's there too now," she explained. "Hi, Daddy." "Hi, sweetheart. Listen, I have something important to tell you both. There's a big business trip I'm supposed to take, but I've decided not to go." "Why not?" Elin asked. "Because I'd rather spend time with you and Mommy. Because I missed too much already, and I don't want to miss any more." "But what if your boss gets mad?" Caleb's laugh was soft but sad. "I am the boss, baby girl, and I've decided that being your daddy is more important than any business meeting." Elin looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Does this mean he's going to stay?" "Not exactly stay," Mara said carefully, "but maybe visit more often, maybe be around more, like a real family." The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility and fear and hope. "Would you like that?" Caleb asked gently. "More than anything in the whole world," Elin said without hesitation, "but only if Mommy wants it too." 2 pairs of eyes, one honey-colored, one steel blue, turned to Mara, waiting for an answer that would shape all their futures. Mara thought about the past 6 years, about the strength she'd found in solitude, about the walls she'd built to protect her heart. Then she thought about the man who had just risked his entire empire for the chance to read bedtime stories and attend spelling tests. "I want it too," she whispered. And for the first time in 6 years, the word family felt like something they might actually be able to build together. The conversation that followed was tentative, careful, full of logistics and boundaries and careful hopes. But underneath it all was something neither Mara nor Caleb had dared to believe in again. The possibility that love, once broken, could actually be repaired. That some choices, even when they come late, can still change everything. 2 years later, the Sunday morning light filtered through the windows of the brownstone apartment on the Upper West Side, casting golden patterns across the hardwood floors. Jazz music drifted from the kitchen, mixing with the sound of sizzling pancakes and Elon's delighted laughter. "Higher, Daddy. Spin me higher." Caleb lifted his 7-year-old daughter into the air, twirling her around the spacious kitchen, while Mara flipped pancakes at the stove, shaking her head but smiling at their antics. "Careful, you two. We don't need a trip to the emergency room before Grandma Chen arrives." Mrs. Chen had become a treasured part of their extended family, joining them for Sunday dinners and spoiling Elon with stories and homemade dumplings. She'd been the first person to embrace Caleb when he'd moved to New York, telling him simply, "Love is what matters. The rest we figure out." "When is she coming?" Elon asked, settling at the kitchen island where a stack of golden pancakes awaited her attention. "Around noon," Mara replied, adding fresh blueberries to the plate. "Right after your art class." Art class was one of many new additions to their life together. Caleb had enrolled them both, him to learn something he'd never had time for, Elon to explore the talent that seemed to grow stronger each week. Their refrigerator was covered with her latest creations, including a family portrait that now showed 4 figures: Mommy, Daddy, Elon, and Mrs. Chen. "Can we go to the park after?" Elon asked, syrup dripping from her fork. "If it's not too cold," Mara said, leaning against the counter with her coffee. She wore one of Caleb's old college sweatshirts over yoga pants, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. It was the kind of casual intimacy that had taken months to rebuild, small gestures of trust and comfort slowly weaving together into something stronger than what they'd had before. Caleb moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but one that still sometimes surprised them both with its naturalness. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her ear. "Just this. All of it." She leaned back against his chest. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." 2 years ago, neither of them would have imagined this scene. Caleb had indeed lost his company. The board had voted him out 6 months after he'd refused the Singapore deal. The financial press had called it the most expensive family decision in corporate history. But he'd used the settlement money to start smaller, focusing on sustainable technology consulting. It was less lucrative but more meaningful, and it allowed him the flexibility to be present for the life he'd almost thrown away twice. "Mommy, are you and Daddy going to get married again?" Elon asked suddenly, the question coming out of nowhere the way children's observations often do. Mara nearly choked on her coffee. "Elon, sweetheart, Jamie's parents got divorced and then married each other again," Elon continued matter-of-factly. "She said it was like a do-over, but with better cake." Caleb and Mara exchanged glances over Elon's head. They'd talked about marriage tentatively, but had decided to focus on building their relationship day by day, rather than making grand gestures or commitments. "What do you think about that idea?" Caleb asked carefully. "I think," Elon said, taking a huge bite of pancake, "that we're already a family. The marriage thing is just paperwork." "Very wise," Mara laughed. "Where did you learn to be so smart?" "From you and Daddy and Grandma Chen. And from books. Books teach you everything." After breakfast, they walked to Elon's art class, bundled in winter coats and scarves. New York in January was harsh, but they'd learned to find beauty in the season. Ice skating in Central Park, hot chocolate from street vendors, the way snow transformed the city into something magical. "Miss Sullivan Whitmore," called Elon's art teacher as they arrived. "Ready for our watercolor lesson today?" Elon had started hyphenating her name when Caleb moved to New York, a decision she'd made entirely on her own. "I want everyone to know I have both my parents," she'd explained with 7-year-old logic. As they watched through the window of the art studio, Caleb slipped his hand into Mara's. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Letting me back into your lives? Never, Mara said without hesitation. Not once. Do you regret losing the company? Best decision I ever made. Second best, anyway. What was the first? Buying that plane ticket to Chicago 2 years ago. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their daughter paint with intense concentration, her tongue poking out slightly the way it always did when she was focused. She's going to be extraordinary, Caleb said. She already is. Just like her mother. Mara turned to look at him. This man who had broken her heart and then spent 2 years carefully putting it back together. The silver in his hair had spread, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, but he looked younger somehow. Happier. Caleb? Yeah? Ask me again in 5 years. Ask you what? About the marriage thing. When we've had more practice at this family stuff. His smile was brighter than the winter sun streaming through the studio windows. I'll put it in my calendar. You better. Later that evening, after Mrs. Chen had come and gone, after dinner and homework and the nightly ritual of 3 stories before bed, Mara and Caleb found themselves on their small balcony, looking out over the city that had become their home. She asked me something today, Mara said suddenly, while you were reading to her. What's that? She asked if I was happy now. Really, truly happy. What did you tell her? I told her, Mara said, leaning against the railing, that happiness isn't just one feeling. It's contentment and gratitude and hope all mixed together, and that yes, I am happy, we are happy, even with all the complications, the custody schedules and the co-parenting apps and the way we still sometimes don't know how to talk to each other, especially with all the complications. Perfect was overrated anyway. A few blocks away, church bells chimed 9 o'clock, and somewhere in the apartment below them, a baby was crying. Life continuing its messy, beautiful, imperfect course. You know what I realized? Caleb said. What? That day 6 years ago when I sent you that message, I thought I was choosing success over love, but I wasn't successful. I was just efficient, cold, empty. And now I know the difference. Inside, they could hear Elin talking to herself as she settled into sleep, probably practicing the story she was writing for class or having a conversation with her stuffed animals. The sounds of a child who felt safe, loved, secure in her place in the world. We should go in, Mara said, but neither of them moved. In a minute, they stood together in the cold night air, 2 people who had learned that love isn't just about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about choosing each other every day, in small ways and large ones. It's about showing up when it's hard, staying when it's easier to leave, and believing that broken things can be more beautiful when they're carefully mended. 6 years ago, Caleb Whitmore had made the worst decision of his life. 2 years ago, he'd made the best one. And tonight, standing on a balcony in New York City with the woman he'd lost and found again, listening to their daughter's sleepy voice drifting through the window, he understood that the greatest success story he'd ever be part of wasn't measured in profits or acquisitions. It was measured in Sunday morning pancakes and bedtime stories and the way Elin now called them both when she had nightmares, secure in the knowledge that her family would always answer. Some stories don't have perfect endings, but the best ones have true ones. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, you get a second chance to write the ending you were always meant to have. Have you ever gotten a second chance at something you thought was lost forever? What would you have done in Caleb's situation? Chosen security or risked everything for love? Your participation in the channel is very important, so please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.